You know what I've found in all my years of covering the news and traveling the world? I found that the world is mostly boring, that mostly things don't happen. Life's routine. People wake up, they have coffee, they go to work, and typically these big, crazy stories are extremely rare. Yeah, life is fairly boring. Even in places where there's been great turmoil and civil unrest, the moments, those flashpoints, they're actually not as crazy as people think they are, albeit they are crazy, right? I'll give you an example. The Ferguson riots. I'm sure if you read the history books on the Ferguson riots, you're going to be like, wow, and you're imagining this craziness, this chaos. Yeah, it was like half a city block. Now, don't get me wrong, when they started burning down buildings, it stretched all down this road for a couple blocks. There was a lot of violence and everything. But it was interesting to talk to locals who are like, it's the weirdest thing to see on the news, to hear the story about this great calamity and this great chaos. And then if you actually live in the area, you're like, it's just, 100, 200 people on this one city street. I'm like, yeah, that's what it's always been. It has never been these great conflicts of hundreds of thousands of people smashing into things. Now, I think it's fair to point out the Summer of Love was fairly crazy, and we did see escalation. And it is very possible that in the future, we will see a major flashpoint with big, big, big news stories. My point is simply this. Through the lens of the media, stories are substantially crazier than they really appear in real life. Take, for instance, this story. Oh boy. Everyone's already calling this one a false flag. There's a lot of context around this one, but let me read you the news. Man with Nazi flag is charged with threatening to kill President Biden after he crashed a U-Haul truck into White House security gates before Secret Service took him into custody. Man with a Nazi flag. Now, if you tell someone that story, the way it's framed, in their mind, they're imagining some crazy guy waving a flag, slamming into the gates, being like, "Arr!" You actually watch the video, you're like, what? Like, what is this? The truck is going less than a mile an hour. It gets stuck on a curb and just shakes a little bit. Then the police come and they pull out a pristine Nazi flag and lay it on the ground for everybody to see. And it's just like, why would they do that? What is this even? I'll tell you what I think right now. A lot of people are saying it's a false flag attack. And I'm like, well, I don't know about all that. I mean, it's crazy people do crazy things. Some people are wondering, why a U-Haul truck? What was in it? Sometimes crazy people do crazy things. I can only tell you that this shouldn't be news. That's all I can say. So for the people who are like, it's a false flag, I mean, maybe the reason they feel that way is, why is it news that a guy in a U-Haul truck jumped the curb by 2 feet and then stopped? Like nothing happened. The fascinating thing to me is this story is traveling further. Already then, when far leftists tried destroying St. John's Church, set fire to guard posts at the White House, forced the president underground into a bunker, tore down the barricades of the White House. And I'm like, y'all remember when that happened? Huh. Well, here we are. The man who has not yet been named crashed into the White House barrier. He is now charged with trying to kidnap or kill a president. What, really? What did he even do? I think I got a photo. Do I have the photo up here? Oh, we have a statement from this guy. Okay, here's the photo. So it hits the barricades, it jumps the curb and just stops. That's it. I mean, you watch the video and I was just like, huh? And then you can see the police then pull out a Nazi flag and lay it on the ground. I'm like, huh? Why would you do any of this? I don't know. We have this tweet from Gain of Fauci, and this seems to be the sentiment spreading on Twitter. He says, the feds, we need a false flag attack tonight. This is coming straight from the top. Dude, it's midnight. I know. I'm sorry, but we got to pull it off somehow. What do you got? Well, I just helped my mom move. I have a fresh U-Haul truck handy. Okay, nice. I have a Nazi flag myself. Are you thinking what I am? The standard U-Haul wreck near the White House, and then we happen to find, their Nazi flag inside the cab. You know it, man. We make a good team. That is the perspective that is spreading on Twitter. Here's another one. They are claiming that this Nazi flag was pulled from the cab of the U-Haul truck that lightly crashed near the White House. I'm not making this up. Here's the video. Let's play the video. That's it. This is it. Watch. That's all that happened. That's the whole thing. Now, look, I get it. Here's what I think. Maybe if I had to talk probabilities, The probability that the feds staged a guy in a U-Haul with a Nazi flag, slim. I know a lot of people are like, the feds do this stuff all the time. I'm like, yeah, the problem is you're assuming who did it. Maybe, like, for all we know, this guy, I'll put it this way. It is more likely this guy just did it. The next most likely thing is it's a lefty or liberal, because we know about, like, say, like the Jussie Smollett hoax. And it was just a hoax because the left does all the time. And then, somewhere in there, it's like, yeah, a psyop, I guess. Maybe. Look, I'm not interested in believing any story until I get evidence. But this just doesn't seem like it really rises to the occasion of news. But here's what I do think is pretty crummy. The fact that this happened, it doesn't matter whether the U-Haul was going a mile an hour or 100 miles an hour. It doesn't matter whether or not the guy had a flag bundled up and the cops hit it or not. None of that matters. When people are like, oh, they just laid the flag out on the ground, none of that matters. In fact, that's bad for them. If you wanted to stage a false flag attack, you wouldn't lay the flag out on the ground. You wouldn't need to. You would just say it happened. That's all that matters. People are going to hear this story. They're going to tell this story. I know that if I go to the poker tables, if I go out to a bar, people are going to be like, did you hear about that Nazi guy who like slammed into the White House? Like, whoa, what's happening? Because they're not going to see the video. They're going to hear the story. And maybe that's enough. Now, again, as to who did it, this guy, they arrested him. We'll see who he is. We'll find out. I think a lot of people got to be careful because a lot of people want to just outright believe, oh, it's a false flag attack and the government did it. And I'm like, dude, they're going to release this guy's name and then you're going to be like, oh, it actually did happen. Like, and it actually was just some crazy guy. I guess I'll put it this way. There are more crazy people than I believe there are feds. You know what I mean? Like, you think the FBI did, or these people on Twitter are saying that. And I'm like, there's more crazy political people in the United States than there are law enforcement. I talk about it all the time. New York City's got more protesters than they do have police. There's hundreds of thousands of people in this city who hold this sentiment and will march. We have seen tens of thousands of people march and riot. And then there's only like tens of thousands of cops. You have a lot of crazy people. And then I'll put it this way. Of the cops who actually work intelligence or counterintelligence and things like that would ever be involved in something, it's only like a few thousand. My point is, probability is a crazy guy did a crazy thing. We'll see. We'll see, I suppose. There were no injuries to any Secret Service or White House personnel, and the cause and manner of the crash remain under investigation, Anthony Guglielmi, chief of communications for the Secret Service, wrote on Twitter. Now, here's my favorite part. I got a decent memory, and I know who Anthony Guglielmi is. As soon as I saw this, I was like, wait, what? Wait, hold on. Anthony Guglielmi, chief of communications for the Secret Service. What's he doing talking about this? You know why? He's the Jussie Smollett guy. Yeah. I'm like, wait, what? And then I tweet that and people are like, you think it's a false flag? And I'm like, I didn't say that. I just pointed out that's the Jussie Smollett guy. So look at this story. 2019. Empire star Jussie Smollett attackers yelled, "This is MAGA country" during beating. Look how they reported this. And like nothing happened. I mean, well, we know this is a hoax. Take a look at this. Chicago police say they're still searching for the assailants who attacked Empire star Jussie Smollett. In what Chief Communications Officer Anthony Guglielmi says they are investigating as a possible hate crime. Wednesday evening, Guglielmi said police have established potential persons of interest in the assault. He added that a community alert with photos is being constructed and will be disseminated shortly. Now, look, I just thought maybe it's a different Guglielmi. I don't know. And then I looked it up, and sure enough, the pictures all look like the same guy. So I'll just put it at that. I think it's absolutely hilarious. The spokesperson from the Jussie Smollett story is now the spokesperson talking about this crash at the White House. Now, I don't know if the U-Haul had anything in it. Apparently it didn't. But people are pointing out how weird it is that authorities found the Nazi flag and then laid it out perfectly for everyone to see. Why would they do that? I mean, yeah. Just because they did, though, isn't evidence that there's a hoax or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, laying this out is not proof it was a hoax. I don't blame people for just completely disbelieving a story that is on par with Jussie Smollett. Like, I like to point out, who is it that carries around this stuff? Like, even Antifa isn't going to, like, put an Antifa flag in their car when they go and do these things. They just wear hoodies. But I guess you white supremacists really want everybody to know what they think, huh? The driver may have intentionally struck the security barriers. He added in a second tweet. Some roads and walkways around Lafayette Square were temporarily closed as the scene was inspected. The Washington Post also reported that the nearby Hay Adams Hotel was evacuated. Now, did they evacuate these hotels when the far left tore down the barricades of the White House, set fire to St. John's Church? Maybe they did. I don't know. I don't remember seeing the news about it, to be fair. So it was an empty U-Haul truck. Okay. Officials at the scene investigate the contents of the box truck and apparently found a Nazi flag in the vehicle. Oh, how convenient. Footage from a local photojournalist showed a law enforcement officer folding up the flag, which had been spread out on the ground in public view. Even they, like, why did that happen? Why? It's just so weird. Officers retrieved the flag and plastic evidence bags that had been laid out on the sidewalk following the crash and placed them in the back of a U-Haul. A remote-controlled robot pried open the truck's rear door, revealing a dolly, but no other obvious cargo. The Secret Service released the following statement. Shortly before 10 p.m. Monday, Secret Service uniformed division officers detained the driver of a box truck after the vehicle collided with security barriers on the north side of Lafayette Square on 16th Street. We don't know that this person had any ill intentions. He just hit barricades. Maybe the guy was just out of his mind. I have no idea. Anthony Guglielmi says, that's basically what he said. There were no injuries to any Secret Service or White House personnel. And the cause and manner of the crash remain under investigation. Road closures are in effect and pedestrian walkways are closed as we investigate. The truck has been deemed safe. Preliminary investigation reveals the driver may have intentionally struck the security barriers at Lafayette Square. Charges will be filed by the U.S. Park Police with investigative support from the Secret Service. We have this from Twitchy. People are already calling this alleged U-Haul attack near the White House a false flag. Breaking U-Haul, this coverage tonight. Stay with Fox News. Secret Service is using a robot to search a U-Haul truck. U-Haul truck crashed. The evacuation of multiple buildings makes sense as a precaution. A similar sized Ryder truck was used in the Oklahoma City bombing. You want to know where it starts to get interesting? Not that I think it's a false flag or anything. People are pointing this out. But it starts to get interesting when we get to, where's the story at? Do I have that pulled up? Do I not have it pulled up? Oh, here we go. Sorry. 60,000 pounds of an explosive chemical lost during rail shipment. This is actually kind of freaky. I don't know. I'm not saying it has anything to do with each other. But what people are pointing out on Twitter is that, hey, wait a minute. A box truck just slams into the security barricades. News reports from just the other day, May 22nd, show that 60,000 pounds of an explosive chemical are lost. And now people are concerned there could be a false flag. I got another thing to be concerned about. There could literally just be a terror attack, right? I don't need to jump the gun on who or why this is going to happen. I think first and foremost, if 60,000 pounds of an explosive chemical are lost, my first fear is not a false flag attack to smear a group of people. My first concern is, where are those explosives? Where's that explosive chemical? That's freaky. Like, I don't care if it's a false flag or not. The idea that someone could get a bunch of explosive fertilizers or something and then do something bad with it is a bad thing. I do think it's kind of silly to immediately just jump and be like, we know who would do it if they did, instead of just being like, someone may do this. Please, how about we stop this? And I guess the idea that people are posting is, first you get the box truck with the Nazi flag in it. Then you get 60,000 pounds of explosive chemical going missing. That way, when something does happen, they'll say, see, remember when that Nazi guy attacked the White House? See, remember when that chemicals went missing? This proves it. Sure, I don't know. How about we just don't let it happen? If right now we know the chemicals are missing, if right now we know that a guy with a Nazi flag, I'm going to tell it like this. I got no evidence to suggest it's a false flag. I think crazy people sometimes do crazy things. I think we should investigate, figure out who this guy is, and get some motivations. And then I'll add this. If anything does happen, if there is an explosion, at this point, I got to blame the DOJ. You knew about the missing chemicals. You knew about these motivations. How about you up security right now to prevent something from happening? Because the potential exists. And if you can't prevent this, even after knowing of the risks, I blame you. Now, don't get me wrong. First and foremost, I blame the perpetrators, always. But I think if I got to put it this way. Knowing about this and knowing about this attack, if the DOJ, if federal law enforcement can't prevent it or investigate it, we got to defund these guys. We got to absolutely defund these guys. Look, Donald Trump is talking about defunding the DOJ. We got Axios here, his grand vision. They say that, where is it at? Is it in here somewhere? that Donald Trump wants to, he wants the DOJ to investigate Big Pharma. No, that's not, there we go. He said he wants to defund the Justice Department and the FBI. That might have been an exaggeration, but Trump does want his brand of politics to reshape the Justice Department. Okay, let me tell you this. We spend a lot of money on these stories, right? I'm sorry, on this law enforcement. We spend a lot of money on this law enforcement to prevent, to stop terror and crime. If we can't, why are we spending money on it? Maybe we need to reassess and go the minimalist route. Maybe we need more of personal responsibility and less of absolving ourselves of responsibility. That is to say, if we know right now that 60,000 pounds of an explosive chemical have gone missing, if the feds can't figure out what happened, if the feds, knowing an extremist just rammed the barricades, if they don't do anything to up security and stop this before it happens, for what reason are we paying them money? So this is the opportunity here. The worst possible thing, in my opinion, for these people, and the narrative that should be set is, now that we all know of the risks, if the feds cannot do their job, because the general public knows, then they should be completely defunded. I suppose the argument people are making is that the reason for the false flag is to justify the funding for the DOJ. I think it's the opposite. I think the public opinion should be the opposite. People are pointing out, we just had these FBI whistleblowers testify before Congress. And there's been talk of defunding the FBI when also this false flag happens. And it's like, oh, now we need the FBI. If they stop this, I wouldn't disagree. So let's see if that is what happens. If they arrest the guy and they can prove, and it's not some weird story where it was like an FBI informant, I'll be like, well, I got to give him that one. With like the Whitmer case, it turns out almost all the people are informants. Too much of what the FBI does is create the problem and then claim they solved it. So if this stuff's missing and you can prove someone did take it or maybe they're completely unrelated. That's my point. Completely unrelated. But if they can actually say, here's the guy at the White House, here's his background, and we see no connection, it really just was a crazy guy. And it's not even the FBI involved, it's Parks Police. I'll say I appreciate law enforcement stopping a crazy person like this. I appreciate that we invest in these security measures. I don't completely trust these people. I think they're incompetent. We should figure out where the explosives have gone. They say 60,000 pounds of a chemical used as both a fertilizer. What is it? Ammonium nitrate? Yep, ammonium nitrate. And an explosive is missing after likely appearing during a rail trip from Wyoming to California last month, according to federal records. A rail car carrying ammonium nitrate left a plant operated by explosives manufacturer Dyno Nobel in Cheyenne, Wyoming, on April 12th, according to the incident report filed on May 10th. The report states the chemical was released due to an unknown cause and was discovered missing after the rail car arrived in Saltdale, California. This reminds me of Breaking Bad, when they were trying to steal like methylamine or whatever, and they have like the train stop and then they pump it out. What a fun show. If the feds can't figure out what happened to this, what are we paying them for? So this is the big test. If something bad happens, an actual terror attack using this by some Nazi, I think that's all the evidence we need that the FBI has failed and we got to defund them and figure out something different. Maybe focus more on local efforts. Maybe the federal enforcement should be more coordinating instead of actually having an arm. Like the FBI doesn't do the investigation. They just coordinate between offices to help facilitate communications. If they do stop this, then there is no attack. We figure out who did it. We get an investigation and we say, okay, here are the people who did it. I can respect that. But I got to tell you, I'm not confident. I'm not confident at all in federal law enforcement. I think they have no trust. I think right now the public wants them defunded. And then the argument, I suppose, would be that even if they do solve this and figure out who took it, and it turns out to be a nothing burger, let's say it just got dropped on the ground, and it's like, oh, it was a big mistake because it's a big stretch of land. Maybe it just fell off. Let's say they discover that. We say, okay, good job. I don't think anybody cares one way or the other. I think general sentiment is no matter what, we should be defunding this organization. They don't do anything of substance. I think one of the best things for the FBI was the X-Files. Like I know it sounds silly, but I mean it. Because it created this perception that they do something. And there are some stories that I think are really good. Smaller local, smaller level FBI offices, they do investigate a lot of crimes. For real. I have met people who actually do good work, former FBI as well. People you probably know and like who are commentators. It's the DC politicized offices that we do not trust. It's the higher levels. And it's the weaponization of law enforcement at the federal level that we don't trust. I just think maybe we need to get back to the local effort, right? They say in 2020, it was a source of a colossal explosion in Beirut, Lebanon. Yeah, that was an accident. I think it was like a warehouse exploded or something like that. I can't remember. Just give it a little fuel and you're asking for trouble, they say. Sure. People are connecting the dots on these stories. I don't see a reason to connect the dots. I do think it's always fine to point out, like, let's keep an eye on this. If there's crazy people doing crazy things and explosives are missing, we have a serious potential. But why couldn't I just come out and be like, maybe it was Antifa who stole the 60,000 pounds? Right? If it's speculation, it's speculation. My point is simply, we don't know. We don't know who's doing it or why they're doing it or what happened. For all we know, the train busted and it just poured out over several dozen miles, right? The train's going and then it starts just like falling at the bottom of the train. Who knows? I don't like connecting the dots where dots need not be connected without direct evidence. So what I can say is the story of the guy crashing into the barricades and just happening to have a Nazi flag is absolutely silly. But sometimes stupid people do stupid things. And that could involve a false flag or otherwise. Here's what I think is important. You know about these things. We don't jump to conclusions, but we know about these things. And then we keep an eye on what happens in the future. If something happens and connects the dots, it'll be important that we did watch this stuff. I also think it's very hilarious that Anthony Guglielmo was the Jussie Smollett cop, and now he's this cop too. I'm not saying it means anything. I just think it's funny. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.